Hi, I'm Arthur, and I'm eating a hot dog for every passing yard Pitt had against Clemson in the ACC championship game this past Saturday. Now, I was able to get these hot dogs. Sheets has a great deal. You can get 2 hot dogs for $1. I got 8 hot dogs for $4. Hold on. They're good. Yeah. But also I want to talk about Pitt. Pitt had a good season. I know they're like 7-6 right now. Even if they lose to Stanford in the Sun Bowl and finish 7-7, that's still 2 more wins than they had last season. So that's okay. They made it to the ACC championship game. I know they didn't win. I know they didn't look good in the game, but that's got to count for something. Like, there were, I want to say any number of teams, like legitimately probably like 3 or 4. If you think about like Miami, Virginia Tech, no, probably not Virginia Tech. They sucked. I would say Virginia, Georgia Tech, and Pitt. So to come out of that, and Duke too. So like for Pitt to come out of that group, like that's impressive. And they're gonna play those ACC Coastal games every year. So like those are the teams that Pitt needs to be, really measuring themselves up against. I know everyone would like for Pitt to be so good that they just like win every game, but that's not realistic, So like, okay, of the teams they play, right? There's 7 teams they play every single season, right? There's all the coastal teams and there's Syracuse. So when they played those games, they went 5-2. Like that's pretty good. Like I'm not gonna say that was an amazing record, but if you talk about like, 5-2 as like a base starting off point. And then you gotta talk about the rest of their schedule, because that's where I know a lot of people are talking and like complaining like we scheduled too hard or something. I am of the belief that you can never schedule too hard in college football. Especially if you're a team like Pitt. Because Pitt is like the biggest thing that Pitt's provided themselves in the past like decade or whatever is just like beating top teams. Like you got to schedule them to play them. And also like, when people talk about like, Pitt had to play a bunch of hard teams, like, well, okay, like, so there's the ACC championship game. You know how you got, like, you won the Coastal. That's how you had to play a team that good. And Clemson is one of the best teams. And then you talk about like, okay, well then, the ACC stuff, what else? Okay, like that's fine. Like Notre Dame. Notre Dame's not like an optional game that Pitt was like, yeah, we want to play Notre Dame. That's part of their contract with the ACC. Where Notre Dame gets all the ACC bowl bids and whatever. They play a certain amount of games every season against ACC teams, and it just rotates evenly. So, like, it wasn't like Pitt's athletic department called up Notre Dame and was like, we'd really like to go play a road game and wherever Notre Dame is. No, like it just happens. Like it's an ACC thing. You only have 8 conference games, and every few years it's kind of like having a 9th. And Notre Dame was really good this year. Like they haven't lost. They're probably not as good as Clemson or Alabama, but like they're good. There's no shame in losing that game, and it's also not something you can fault the athletic department for scheduling, because they didn't. It was the ACC. So then there's UCF. Like if you're a Pitt fan and you're like, we don't want to play UCF. Number one, man, if like even Pitt doesn't want UCF, I don't know who's gonna, in the Power 5 gonna play UCF, right? Because everyone's like, UCF. Well, they just need to play more power conference teams, right? Like, well, I mean, if even Pitt doesn't want him, I don't know how that's going to work. But UCF also was scheduled before they did the whole thing where they haven't. I think, well, actually, I think they were like a normal middle of the road AAC team, you know, as a team where you're like, okay, well, that could be an interesting opponent. You're going to do the home and home, so you get to play a game in Orlando for recruiting purposes, and you know, you should be able to win both games, but you know, you get a lot out of it. And it just happens that since Pitt scheduled a middle of the pack AAC team, they haven't lost a game, and like there's really nothing you can do about that. But I'd like, you're complaining that like, oh, like why would Pitt play at UCF? Like that's like, no, you get to play in Orlando. Like it's a recruiting thing. You get to be there, be visible for Florida prospects. You know, if you've looked at where Pitt is recruiting their players from, you know, that's, you know, a lot of guys come out there. Like that's why you play the game. So I would, again, it's not like, oh wow, what a, you know, dumb scheduling move. Like it makes perfect sense. So stop complaining. So what other games? Well, there's the Albany game. I forget which non-conference team they're playing next year. Is it like, I don't know, maybe it's like Delaware or something. I don't know off the top of my head. But you know, whatever. Like that's an FCS team, but like it's fine. It happens. You win. It's easy. So really, the only non-conference game that was like, oh wow, like they scheduled a really tough game, is Penn State. So like, the way I see it, if you're like, oh wow, like Pitt needs to schedule easier non-conference slates or something, like, oh well then, like, do you not want to play Penn State? Do you not want to play like West Virginia in a couple of years? You know, like these are. This is why you schedule those games. You know, you want it because you actually do want to play those teams. These are really good, by the way. If Pitt had thrown for slightly more passing yards against Clemson, I could probably still do this. You know, like probably not too many more, but if like I don't know, like another. Maybe like 2-yard dump off to George Ashton. Like I could push through. Yeah. The other thing I want to say about Pitt and their scheduling is that like if you think you're good, you should schedule hard. Like if you're gonna be like, oh man, like we want to play some easy teams so we can, you know, go out and get ourselves a nice win-loss record. Like first of all, like who cares about the win-loss record? You know what I mean? Like. It's important to a certain extent. Like, there's a big difference between winning 5 games and winning 6 games. After that, it's kind of like, like I don't know. It's not, you know, it's not super important. Like, who cares? You know, like if any individual game, like yes, after every game Pitt lost, like people are upset and people complain. But in the grand scheme of things, like you look at like I don't know the Sun Bowl saying like, oh yeah, 7-6 Pitt, like. If Pitt had gone 8-5 instead, like would that have been like, oh wow, like we're gonna go to another bowl game? Like, oh, probably not. You know, that's not really how any of that stuff works. It's not like there's a big win-loss thing, and so like really, it doesn't matter. You schedule, you're like, oh wow, we need to schedule some like weak opponents. That's something you do when you try to just get bowl eligible. You know, like. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, like some ACC teams, for example, like Wake Forest this year, they had, I forget who they had. I know they had like Tulane, they had an FCS game. They had, and then they had Notre Dame in there, but you know, something like, oh yeah, well they need to like play those games and then they can scrap together 6 wins and go to where are they going? I forget where they're going. For their bowl, I can look it up, but. Like, Pitt is not that team, you know? Like, yeah, they didn't make a bowl last year, but they make a bowl pretty consistently, you know? We're not in a position of, like, someone else with an easy schedule, Syracuse, who, again, had the, like, easy 3-1 non-conference schedule because they had to play Notre Dame, but outside of that, it was just like, yeah, because Syracuse is a team that I don't know when the last time they made a bowl was, and they needed to do that. And yeah, like they went 9-3, and they were able to get like what's it now? Camping World Bowl. But that really doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. Like, I guess they get to play West Virginia, which is a cool thing, but I don't think anyone's going to go back and be like, wow, you know what? Like, Syracuse was impressive how they won 9 games. Because, smart people that watch college football, follow college football, take all that stuff into account. You can probably get more recognition and whatnot if you just play a really hard schedule. Like if you are like Pitt playing 3 of the 4 undefeated teams, like that's something you can hang your hat on. And like, I don't know, if you just kind of ride like a mess schedule to just like, yeah, got a bowl, like who cares, It's like I'm not gonna go wild about it. And the other thing is, like, if you think that Pitt can be like a really good team as opposed to just like, oh yeah, solid like ACC Coastal, then you should want them to play those games, because if they are ever going to be a really good team, like those are the games they're going to need to win. And A, they're never going to have a chance to prove themselves if they don't play those games, and B, if you believe in the team, then you believe they can win those games, even if they didn't this season. Hey, man, if you believe in this team going forward next year and year from that, then you want them playing those games. Yeah. I'm able to eat these in like 2 bites, maybe 3, but it's pretty efficient. I can totally see how what's his name, Joey Chestnut, can eat 72 hot dogs. Like, I mean, I can't imagine actually doing that. And it's wild that if Pitt had 72 passing yards against Clemson, people would probably still be complaining. They'd be like, oh wow, the passing game was garbage, only 72 hot dogs. And then meanwhile, we'd have Joey Chestnut over here eating 72 hot dogs and be like, wow, okay. Like, what do I have to do to impress you? Yeah, so I think a lot of people talking about going forward, like, I'm not going to say anything about specific people's jobs, right? Like, I'm not going to talk about other people's jobs, but, like, I don't think anyone's talking about, like, whoa, like, this is not a good year for Pat Narduzzi. Like, even if he goes 7-7, he said at the beginning of the year, he's like, yep, see you in Charlotte, and he made it to Charlotte. Like, that's going to bring him a lot of goodwill. Even if, the end result is like, oh, we went 7-7, like, the context is important, and that's the context. All right, I want to move on. I want to talk about something else real quick while I finish. Wow, I still have like 3.5 hot dogs. It's hard to talk and eat at the same time. I'll say that. Yeah, they can't find anyone to host the Oscars, apparently. Like, it's just like, yeah, no one wants to host the Oscars. So I want to submit this as like an audition to host the Oscars. If I am selected to host the Oscars, I will get up on stage. I will eat 8 more hot dogs. They got to be from Sheetz, so I'll have to fly them out to LA, which is a little expensive, but like that's it. That's the only thing I need. I'll even, I won't need any like wardrobe or anything. I can do that. Spoiler alert: it's just gonna be like a James Conner T-shirt or something. Say like "Hail to Pitt," but yeah, I'll do it.